Hi, so the semester's really moving along here. We're up to week 9 of a 13-week class, so we're in the home stretch, I would say. And this week we're making a pretty big transition. We're moving on from discussing administrative law to litigation resources. And as a matter of fact, we're making a bigger transition than that. During the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about how to research different areas of primary law. We started with cases, then we moved on to statutes, and we finished up with administrative law last week. And now for the next 2 weeks, instead of focusing on finding primary law, we're going to explore resources that help practicing lawyers actually practice in their specialty area. So this week, we'll talk about the various resources that are designed to aid litigating attorneys, drafting papers, preparing for trial, conducting trials, and evaluating settlement offers. And next week, we'll move on to my area of specialty back when I practiced, which is the kind of resources that are available to corporate transactional lawyers. So lawyers who are doing deals, mergers, joint ventures, and simple things like employment agreements and certificates of incorporation, housekeeping documents. But anyway, we'll spend more time talking about that next week. So for now, here are the resources that we'll talk about for this week. In the video lecture, we'll talk about dockets and court documents. And then in the class lecture, we'll talk about litigation tools. You can see here that there's a number of different resources that fall under the category of litigation tools. So we'll spend a fair amount of time in class not only talking about what are litigation tools, but where do you find them and what do you do with them once you do find them. All right, so dockets, that's what we're going to start with. And everybody ends up loving this topic and playing around with the dockets. And it is a really cool thing to know how to do. So what is a docket? It's basically just like a table of contents for all the materials that have been filed in a court case. So it isn't the court documents themselves. So it isn't the complaint or the orders. It's a listing of those documents, usually ordered by date, with the most recently filed document appearing at the end of the docket sheet. What sorts of documents will you find listed in a docket? Just to name a few, you'll find complaints, answers, motions, briefs, orders, and lots of other different things. As I said, basically everything that's been filed with the court for a particular case will be listed on that case's docket sheet. So you can see how useful this would be if you were looking for something to help you draft a particular order or kind of answer or a complaint that had a particular cause of action in it. You could use it for precedent, but you could also, with the docket sheet in hand, examine the entire life of a case from the filing of the complaint all the way through the final judgment issued by the court. If you were interested in doing appeal work or for whatever reason that you might be interested in a case, this would be a good way to see when were the conferences held, what did the judge order, any reason why you might be interested in a particular case, a docket sheet would be a good place to start. So where do you find dockets? You can find docket sheets in a bunch of different places in a wide variety of databases. Bloomberg Law has by far the most useful and deepest docket collection. It's kind of ironic that they also have the best corporate transactional resources, so we'll be spending a lot of time in Bloomberg Law, both this week and next week. So Bloomberg provides not only the docket sheet, which is the listing of the documents, but for many cases, Bloomberg also allows you to access and download copies of the documents listed in the docket sheet, which you may have thought you could get anywhere, but you can't. Most of the resources that we're going to look at, it's just the docket sheet, and then you'd have to go search for the document somewhere else. So you can also access U.S. Supreme Court dockets from the Supreme Court website. For Court of Appeals and District Court cases, this is the federal level now. Federal courts publish docket information on PACER. We'll look at that in a minute. And then these dockets are also available on Bloomberg Law. And then finally, you can access some Supreme Court and lower federal court dockets on Westlaw and Lexis, but the coverage is definitely not as good as it is on Bloomberg Law or PACER. At the state level, many states publish their docket information, again, this is just a docket sheet now, on their court's website. And you can find limited coverage of state documents on Bloomberg Law, Westlaw, and Lexis. Again, Bloomberg's docket databases are the best. And then Bloomberg also has some limited coverage of foreign dockets. So you might be able to find a docket and the underlying documents of litigation that's going on in a foreign country, but it's limited. You can't assume that you're going to find everything there. All right, so let's take a look at some dockets. Let's see how you actually do this search if you're looking for a particular court docket. So here I'm on the Supreme Court website to search for Supreme Court dockets. And you can see the search bar right there. You can use that to run a keyword search for the docket sheets. And again, I'm just searching the sheet, not the underlying document. So here I entered Fisher versus University of Austin. When you search docket sheets, as I said, you're searching the sheet itself and not the information contained in the docket. So because of this, you need to do very broad searches. There's not that much information on a docket sheet, not like if you were searching the brief, for example, where you could get very specific language and do a keyword search based on that. Here you just need to search something like the party names, or even better, the docket number if you have it. So there's no way to sort the results, but you can scroll through them. So here's the first result that I got, and I can just scroll down. look and see which one seems like it is the case that I'm interested in. And here, I think I want to take a look at 14.981. I just click on the link, and then it's going to bring up the docket sheet. And there's a docket sheet. That's what it looks like. This is the docket sheet for the Fisher case. So now you can see here's the list of the actions that are taken in this case, including the motions, the briefs, the orders entered, and the arguments heard. And you can see it goes chronologically from the first thing that happened, and it goes on from there. If I click on this questions presented link, you'll see the legal questions that the court's going to consider in the Fisher case. And this is really helpful if you're doing Supreme Court research. It's just sort of a paragraph summary of the big issues that they're handling. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at PACER. PACER stands for Public Access to Court Electronic Records. It's an acronym. PACER is the electronic database which contains federal case and docket information. From PACER, you have access not only to the docket sheet, but also to the underlying documents that are listed on the docket sheet, so the cases, filings. And that's with a pretty big caveat. That's as long as the papers were filed electronically, because some courts still don't do that. So if a federal court doesn't require electronic filings, you still might not be able to get a particular case. And obviously, this is becoming less and less of an issue as time goes on, but it's still something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that PACER charges a fee, while Bloomberg's dockets are pretty much pulling all the information that can be found on PACER. So almost anything you can find on PACER, you can also find on Bloomberg through its dockets tab. And while you're a student here at BLS, you can access all of these documents for free through Bloomberg Law. And in fact, if you find a federally filed document that's not available on Bloomberg, you can request that Bloomberg retrieve it for you from PACER, and it will pull it from PACER for you. So to search PACER, you're going to need a party name or a docket number. So unlike Bloomberg, you can't do keyword searches to try and find a case. But PACER does provide a helpful training website. So let's just take a look at that. So here's how from the home page, if you were doing a search, you would click on this link, find a case, and then enter the case name or the docket. And if you wanted to go to this training website, you would click on this help, and it would bring up this screen here. You can actually go into the database and practice locating real dockets and retrieving real court filings. Just practice and do some of this for free before you start actually doing real docket searching. Incidentally, you may be wondering, why am I showing you PACER if Bloomberg has the same dockets and doesn't charge a fee? And the reason is simple, because while you have access to Bloomberg for now, you might not have access wherever you go for your job. So it's good to know about PACER as well. So here we are to Bloomberg then. As I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, Bloomberg Law is an excellent resource for dockets. It's where everybody who's here at BLS would go. Not only do they have good coverage, lots of courts are available in there, you can also usually retrieve copies of the documents that are underlying the docket sheet. So if you find a complaint listed on a docket sheet, Bloomberg will allow you to actually download and look at a copy of the complaint. To begin a docket search from the Bloomberg landing page, I'd first select Litigation and Dockets, there it is, and then I would click on Search Dockets. On the Dockets main search page, you can either search all courts or you can search a particular court. There's different fields that you can fill in. You can search for a party name, an attorney, a firm, a docket number, a court, or you can run a keyword search. So if you just have an idea of the kind of case you're looking for, or for even better results, you can use a combination of these fields for your search. A great feature of Bloomberg Dockets is that when it searches dockets, it searches the full text of the documents underneath the docket. So whereas I said before, like on the Supreme Court website, you're only searching that docket sheet, here you're searching all of the documents that are on the docket sheet. So the complaints, the orders, the judgments, all of that. So let's assume here that I had heard of a case where Tom Cruise sued a magazine for defamation. I enter the keyword defamation in the keyword field, and then Tom Cruise in the party name field. Now, Bloomberg Law is going to search not only the docket sheet, but also the actual court filings, complaints, briefs, motions for my keyword party name combination. So here I'm going to run the search, and I return one docket, and it's the case that I'm interested in. So you can see this works really well. So let's just assume for a minute I couldn't remember Tom Cruise's name. So I search for defamation and celebrity and magazine. Now I've returned 271 results, not so helpful. Another not so great feature of Bloomberg Dockets is there's no relevancy ranking for the search results. So the results are ranked from most recent to least recent, so that's not so helpful. Fortunately, there are filters that you can use, just like all of these databases. You can use those filters on the left to refine your results after you get them. Two useful filters are by court or by type of suit. So using the court filter, if I knew what court it was in, I just knew it was filed in a California court, state or federal court with California as its jurisdiction, I could filter down for California. Doing this Now there's only 18 results to review. And if I scroll down a bit, I find my Tom Cruise case as the 12th result down. If I click on the result hyperlink, I can see the full docket. And there it is. Now you can actually see what a docket sheet looks like. So this is the full docket sheet for that Tom Cruise defamation case. You can see that the associated pleadings and all the filings are numbered in the left-hand column there. And then say I see a document that I'm interested in and I want to take a look at it. Items that have been requested and retrieved by other Bloomberg Law users will have the word view next to them. If you click on that view, the document just appears. So, no charge, and you can take a look at the document, download it if you want to. Items that have not yet been requested by another B-Law user will have the word request next to them. And then a document request screen will appear. Here, I'll show you what that looks like. So there's view, there's request, and then I get this document request screen. So you can just go ahead and press accept without entering a client or a matter number. While you're here at BLS, ignore the notice about costs. There's no retrieval costs for academic accounts. And just to reiterate, if the material was filed electronically and available electronically, Bloomberg will retrieve it for you and send it to you by email. If it's not available electronically, Bloomberg would need to send a courier to retrieve it, so they'd go into the paper files. But as law students, you don't have access to the courier material. So firms pay a fee to Bloomberg to send couriers to retrieve the documents. For you, there's absolutely no harm in requesting a docket document. If you're interested in it, just go ahead and request it, because if it's not available, you'll simply receive an email from Bloomberg telling you you don't have access to the document. So go ahead if you want to take a look at it. If you're working on something and you think you might like to look at a complaint or an order or something, go ahead and request it, and Bloomberg will let you know whether you have access to it or not. So one last thing before we leave Bloomberg Law. When you're working with dockets, it's important to make sure that the docket was recently updated. So check at the top of the docket sheet for the date of the last update. If it's not current, like within the last day or so, just click on Update Docket. And then Bloomberg Law will go ahead and update it. It'll do an electronic search and see if any additional filings have been made. And it'll email you again. This is all kind of automated. You'll get an email to your account that you set up when you set up your Bloomberg Law account, and it'll tell you that the update's complete. And then if you're interested in tracking the document, you can click on the Track Documents link, and Bloomberg Law will email you every time there's a new update to the docket. So if you're an attorney or a law student and you're following a particular case, this is a great feature, because anytime anything's filed on the case, you'll get an email telling you what's happened, and then you can go back to the docket and take a look. All right, so let's take a look at dockets on Westlaw Next, because you may not have Bloomberg Law wherever you go. Fortunately, docket coverage on Westlaw is not nearly as broad as on Bloomberg Law. In fact, often you're just provided with a docket sheet with no links to the underlying documents like you are on some of the free resources. But you can search for dockets right from the Westlaw landing page. So here I'm going to show you, there's dockets. First I select that, then I go ahead and select a jurisdiction. What jurisdiction's dockets do I want to search? Here I'll choose New York. And then I'm going to be given a list of courts that I can search. So there's the state courts above, or the federal courts that have New York as their jurisdiction. And then you can always click on this little I symbol that is a scope note, and it'll tell you what information is contained in the source that you're searching. So that goes across Westlaw databases, but it's kind of more important here in Docket, so you can see what are you searching and whether you can hope to find what you're looking for.
Just like in Westlaw Next statutes and case law databases, Westlaw Next Docket database has an advanced search screen. After you select your jurisdiction, click on the advanced search button next to the main search bar. And then you can get the template so that you can customize your search. You can search by party name, attorney name, or docket number. Westlaw Next also allows you to run a keyword search, but remember that this is just searching the docket sheet and not the underlying documents. As with Westlaw Next, docket coverage on Lexis Advance is not as good as Bloomberg. So to search dockets in Lexis Advance, first we're going to select dockets, and then we would just pick our jurisdiction. Here I'll pick New York. Once there, I can either do a keyword search, but again, remember I'm just searching the docket sheet, not the underlying documents. Or I can use this advanced search feature, which is like we saw on Westlaw, and I can use it to put in the various parameters that I have. Really great if I have the docket number, or at least if I have the court and the party names, perhaps the counsel that are representing one of the parties, then I'm able to find my case.
So that's Lexis. And then what about free resources for dockets? You can access dockets that are filed with the New York State Courts from the New York Courts.gov website. The URL is right there on the slide. And from the landing page, you would first need to select the appropriate courts to search. So here I'm going to select Web Civil Supreme. Click on that link, and then it brings up this page. And then you need to decide how you want to search. You either search by index number, which is what they would call a docket in New York is the index, party name, attorney, or judge. Index number, as I said, is New York courts use instead of docket number. So there's no keyword search functionality at all. So you really have to know about a case
and have some information about the case before you're able to successfully use this particular website.
All right, so that wraps up dockets. Now let's talk about how do you find the documents actually listed on the docket sheet, briefs, orders, and all sorts of motions. These are called court documents, and we'll talk about them in a fair amount of detail now. Now, obviously, one of the places you could do is Bloomberg Law. I showed you that you have access to all of these court documents that are underlying the docket sheet, but there's other places also that you can go if you're out there and you don't have access to Bloomberg Law. So first, you need to know what court documents are, and then knowing how to find them can actually be incredibly valuable to you as a new attorney. As I mentioned, you can review these documents to examine how others are arguing their legal issues. You can use them as a model for your own court documents. If you're drafting something, you can look and see what experienced practitioners, how they put it, what arguments they use. And you can use them as a research tool to monitor how law in a particular is developing. So you can see what people said a while ago and what are some of the new arguments they're coming up with now and which ones are favored by the particular judge that you're appearing in front of. So to put it another way, what issues are being litigated by parties similarly situated to your clients, and what arguments are being used before the courts. And then obviously you want to see which ones won and which ones lost before you use them. So you can see why you would want to get your hand on these documents. So here are some of the places that you can find these documents. For Supreme Court documents, you can try the ABA website or FindLaw, and I'll show you how to use those in a minute. So you can get briefs, pleadings, and motions from a variety of places. We've already seen how to do it through Bloomberg's Docket database, and you can also do it through Pacer. Westlaw and Lexis have separate court document databases. So their dockets databases don't have the underlying documents, but they have separate databases that do have some trial court documents. And then many firms and policy organizations also make their own briefs available on their organization's website, sort of as a form of attorney advertising, or maybe it's a public service. Maybe I'm being cynical. The ABA is one organization that publishes briefs that have been filed with the Supreme Court, and they make them available for the current term. So here I select the Fisher case that we talked about before, that equal protection affirmative action case I'm interested in. And then I can see there's the brief filed on behalf of the petitioner, who's Abigail Noel Fisher. There's the brief, you can see. So I can go ahead and take a look at that brief now if that's what I'm interested in. You can also use FindLaw. There's a URL down there. Always make sure that you go to the professional site and to find Supreme Court briefs that were filed between 1999 and 2007. Why they chose those particular dates to make briefs available, who knows? But if you're interested in a case in that time period, you can get the briefs from the Supreme Court cases there by clicking on those links. Westlaw has by far the deepest trial courts documents and briefs database. So to access the trial court filing or the briefs on Westlaw Next, select the appropriate resource from the main menu. There's their briefs database. There's their trial courts documents database, which is going to be other documents filed other than briefs. And then there's their trial transcripts and oral arguments. So if you're actually looking to see a transcript to see how something was argued in the oral form, you would click on that. So here I'm going to select briefs. And then once I'm in the database, I can select the appropriate jurisdiction and run a keyword search. So let's assume I was looking for briefs relating to the recent litigation on New York City saying that you could no longer sell giant cups of soda and other sugary drinks. So I do a keyword search, sugary drinks, and ban, and then I come up with these 75 briefs. If I use the filters on the left, I can limit them to New York Court of Appeal briefs if I knew that that was where this litigation ended up, and then I can see that I end up with only 39 briefs. And all of these briefs have to do with that soda ban case. Westlaw also provides me with some related secondary materials. It's always a good idea to look at these related documents because there are sometimes secondary sources that will refer you to additional primary law or just help explain what you're reading. All right, to search briefs on Lexis Advance, I'm going to select briefs, pleading, and motions. And then I'm going to go ahead and select my jurisdiction. I'll choose New York. And now I'm going to run my keyword search, duty to warn. And so these are all the briefs, pleadings, and motions from New York courts that have referenced my keywords. And so remember to use these filters on the left to further refine my results. So I do post-search filtering on Lexis more than pre-search filtering. That's just the way this system works. Okay, so let's actually take a look at one of these briefs. Let's look at the Adams versus Genie Industries. This is an amicus brief that was filed in this case. There's the brief itself, and then if you're looking at a brief, you probably would also be interested in the eventual Court of Appeals opinion that was issued in response to the brief. You might be interested in looking at the briefs filed by the other parties. You might be interested in doing some further research and look at the topic report, so they're all right there on the right-hand side. You can also go ahead and download, you see where it says original source image up at the top there, so you can download a PDF if you're interested in getting a PDF copy or you're doing a site check. All right, so that is it for the video lecture. We're going to do a dockets exercise first thing in class. Then we'll move on to talking about litigation tools, all the different things that you can do when you're a litigator, and the tools that you can use to move from the filing of a complaint all the way to evaluating a settlement offer. And then we'll do an exercise using one of those resources as well.
Don't forget to take the Week 9 quiz and submit your results by email, and I will see you in class.